guys, my name's Kim and this is my channel Expedition 3 Pages. So today I'm starting my March reading vlog. Every month I play a TBR game as well, which is called TBR Trail. And so I've got 4 books on TBR Trail that I am hoping to get through this month as well. So that's kind of going to be an extra goal on just top of just general reading, I guess. But the first book that I picked up off my TBR Trail this month is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So this I picked up in my TBR game that was for the prompt, read a fiction book with a K in the title. And I was really anticipating this book because I know a lot of people really like it. I'm only 50 pages in, so I wanted to talk to you about the 50-page mark just to kind of give you my first impressions. This book follows Dana, who is from the year, well, she's living in the 70s basically. One day something happens to her and she's kind of transported through time and space. And she goes back to 1815. And what was really striking to me about this book is that it happens like very abruptly. Like basically, I guess if not the first page, like the first few pages, it's just like no messing around. She's gone somewhere. And it does say on the back, so it's not a spoiler, but that she meets someone called Rufus and she kind of saves his life, and it happens again and again and again. And that's kind of where we're at now. What is so scary for Dana about this is that she's living in California with her husband. When this happens to her, they've just moved house. But when she's like whipped back in time, she's taken to like the American South, where there was still the slave trade happening. And Dana is a black woman. So obviously going from her kind of very safe apartment in California to suddenly being in this very dangerous part of the world and time for her is very scary. And at the moment, I guess, because we're still very early on, she's just kind of like coming to terms with how she could deal with that. And one of the scenes I've just read was quite harrowing, actually. It was quite a violent scene. Dana kind of is witness to something for the first time, events that she knew that happened and that we all know that happened, but for Dana, seeing it in real life is obviously like on a completely different level, especially when there is a level of threat to herself as well. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it already. I was a bit shocked at first about the time travel. I found it a bit jarring, like it was so sudden, and you know, it's one of those things where it's so unbelievable that it's hard to like buy into. So the conversations between herself and her husband about it, like, it doesn't seem believable, but that's because it's such an unbelievable thing. It just makes the conversation between them sound a little bit unnatural, I guess. But the more I'm getting used to that now, I'm like further into the book, the kind of, the more on board I am with it, I guess. Yeah, I think it's going to be an intense read, to be honest. But I'm looking forward to carrying on with it. I'm really enjoying it so far. The other book that I'm currently trying to read, because my friends and family book club is at the weekend, and as always I'm late and I'm trying to frantically finish the book before the book club meeting. But we're currently reading Grown Ups by Marion Keyes. So far, so I think I'm a few hours into the audiobook at the moment, so I'm listening to it. This book is basically like a big kind of family drama. I don't know, I guess you could say it's a big family drama. It's multi-perspective, but I think the gist of it is that you're mainly following 3 brothers and their families. But the book starts out with them at this big family dinner, and then one of the wives has had concussion and she just starts blurting out all these secrets. And her husband's like trying to drag her away, being like, no. Okay, we need to get you to the hospital. Or she herself is saying, I need to go to the hospital because I can't stop all this stuff coming out. And she's just like blurting it out, and it's obviously going to create like a load of drama. And so that's how the book starts. And then you jump back in time. 6 months into the past, they're on a holiday. So that's when you start meeting them all properly and learning about the past. But yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot. There's a hell of a lot going on. So I'm interested to see where it goes, and obviously to learn these secrets. Although she kind of says the secrets, but you haven't got the context for any of it, so I've forgotten what she said now, to be honest. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of cracking on with that and getting that done by the weekend. But anyway, yeah, so those are the 2 books that I'm kind of mainly focusing on at the moment. So I'll let you know what I think of the books when I finish them, and I'll let you know if I pick anything up in between. So yeah, I hope everyone is doing well, and well, I'll see you in a sec. Hey guys! It's now the 16th of March and I'm laughing because I just recorded a whole clip where I explained to you about Grown Ups, by Marion Keyes, and then I just looked and I didn't have my mic on, so there's going to be no sound recorded. So it's devastating. I'm going to do it again. It's so annoying when you do that because I feel like I got it all out and then now I've got to get it all out again and it's not going to be said in the same way. Yeah, so I finished Grown Ups by Marion Keyes a couple of days ago and I really enjoyed it in the end. It was really good. So I gave it like 3.5 stars because it wasn't quite a 4-star for me, but I did overall really enjoy it. It's just that type of book isn't like my favourite type of book or anything, so that's why I didn't get 4 stars. But basically you're following mainly 3 different families. So the link is the 3 husbands are all brothers. And you're following the perspectives of those 3 brothers and also their wives and one of the children. And within the chapters and within, feels like sometimes within the same paragraphs, you swap perspective. Constantly swapping perspective, but it does work. I don't know if this was a fault of my own, but basically I listened to the audiobook at 1.2 times speed, and sometimes the gap in between sentences was really long and sometimes it felt like it was immediate. So I don't know if it was because of the, like, I sped it up or if it's because the editing was off. I'm not too sure, but to be honest I do listen to other books at 1.2 speed and I've never had that problem before, so it does sometimes skip forward and you do miss the gaps, but it felt really extreme with this audiobook. And it did really confuse me because you'd be in one person's head and then you'd flip within a sentence, like with no breath, and you'd be in someone else's head, and it was a bit confusing. But yeah, so this book, I think I explained in the last clip the basic premise where someone bumps their head and then they let out all the secrets. And that is basically the premise of the book. So you skip back 6 months and then you work forward and you're kind of piecing it all together and everything. And obviously the further down the book you go, the more interested you are in what's happening and the more kind of excited you are to keep reading to find out what happens in the end. That's what I found anyway. And then obviously I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, but at the end Marion Keyes repeats that exact same chapter as the first chapter again. So then you read it again once you know everything. And that's not the end of the book, it carries on, but that was really interesting and I really liked that. I thought that was quite fun. I obviously don't want to go into like any particular details with what happens in the book because the whole thing, it's not a mystery, but you are kind of trying to piece things together along the way and it's just nice to find things out as you go. But a lot of the characters are dealing with their own kind of issues. And so I guess the more you understand about their history and the more you understand about their struggles, the more you understand why they're responding in the way that they are and what is actually going on. I'm losing my voice. I talk so much. I was just filming another video and then film the other clip and then that clip doesn't work. So I've been talking way too long. Sorry. I do just want to highlight though, I'm not going to say exactly what happens, but there is a trigger for eating disorders in this book. That's not a particular spoiler, I don't think, in any kind of way, but I just wanted to highlight that. I have no idea if Marion Keyes has personal experience with what she was writing about or if she just did a lot of research on the subject. It did feel well researched, but I actually don't know, I haven't looked it up. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that in case anybody tries to avoid those subject matters in books. I thought that she made the characters just seem really realistic, and there were some characters you were rooting for, there were some characters that you just completely hated, there were some characters that you hate or like at the beginning and then you try and change your mind throughout the book. So I just think it was really well done and well put together and just really enjoyable read. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you like kind of modern day family stories basically. Anyway, other than that, I've read a little bit more of Kindred, but I haven't finished yet, so I'm not going to talk about that until I've done. But yeah, so I'll speak to you guys soon. Hey guys, so we're now in April, so I'm just going to wrap up what I read for the rest of March and also wrap up how well I did for TBR Trail in the month of March. So I completed Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, which I spoke to you about earlier in the month. And so I think I've explained the general premise of the time travel and going back to a time in America where slavery was still accepted, at least in the South. And I really, really ended up liking this book a lot. I thought that it was really intriguing. I thought that the concept was interesting and well thought out. I thought it was terrifying in parts, it was like infuriating in parts, You just kind of wanted to know what was going on at the end, and ultimately I just really wanted to discuss this book with somebody else once I'd finished it. So I think I'm going to be suggesting it to my friends and family book club so we can talk about it. So yeah, I really ended up enjoying it a lot. Dana, the main character, she witnesses so many horrific things and has horrific things done to her, and just kind of navigating through that and kind of ultimately accepting like her place in that world is quite a terrifying concept. One of the most kind of high stakes things about this book was the way the time travel works. So when Dana kind of goes back in time, whenever she comes back to the future, not very much time has passed. And so this leads to certain risks that have to be taken or that are taken when she goes back in time. So the consequences of it could be quite catastrophic, which you kind of learn throughout the book. And I found that whole concept of time travel, although it's not explained how it works at all, it was just really interesting to think like, okay, so if this is how time travel works, like what are the consequences of that? Like what are the risks that have to be taken? How do you get yourself out of it? Like that kind of thing. But yeah, ultimately I feel I can really recommend this book. It was obviously really hard to read in parts, but I think it's just one of these books that deserves to be read and deserves to be discussed. So I really hope that my friends and family go for it so we can talk about it some more. I then in the month attempted to take part in Becca's Bookoplathon, but I'm just such a slow reader. Like those kind of readathons just don't really work for me in general, I don't think. I burn out really quickly if I try to read too much in one day. And the whole concept of Becca's Bookoplathon is that you read for 48 hours basically and then sleep in between, and I just couldn't keep up. It was sad, but I did finish one book for that, which was The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince by Robin Hobb. This book is kind of like a little companion novella that goes with the overall series of The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. And this book is specifically set in the Six Duchies, which is the same setting as the first trilogy. And a couple of the other ones as well. This particular book was written, I think, in kind of the style of like a folk tale. So the narrator is somebody who lived through the events that are spoken about in this book and actually had quite a heavy role in the events that took place in this book. And she is kind of trying to set the record straight because things have got completely out of hand. The people of the land are starting to believe and think in a certain way, and they believe events happened in a certain way, and she knows different. And so the whole point of this book is to really hammer home the truth of what actually happened. She herself, I actually don't know if you know her name. I now can't think what her name would be. But anyway, she is kind of born to a mother who looks after, or is a wet nurse to the children in the royal family, and she is born at a similar time to the princess, the willful princess, who is called Princess Caution. And in this world, when a name is given to a member of the royal family, it's kind of attached to them by some kind of weird magic, I think. It's a bit unclear whether or not it actually happens, or if it's just something that they think happens, or if it's real magic, I don't know. Whatever happens when the name Caution is being bound to the princess doesn't really work. And so she's not true to her name. And so the person who's telling the story, she actually grew up with the princess and was like kind of her friend, her companion, her maid, just did everything for her, made the princess seem like she did nothing wrong, etc. And so that is what the first part of the book is about. It's about Princess Caution kind of growing up and how she is as a child, moving into kind of adolescence and young adulthood. And then the second part of the book is actually about the child that Princess Caution had, and what happens to him and his rivalry with a cousin, I think it was, for his seat on the throne. If you know the Realm of the Elderlings series, or you've read like the first trilogy, basically this story tells you yeah, and for that I found so interesting. So I've obviously read this after finishing the first series, or the first two series in the Robin Hobb Realm of the Elderlings. I think just after the first series would be a good time, in my opinion, to read it, because you've got all the intrigue about this type of magic and you really want to know why, and this book really answers the question, which I really liked. And I think as well that this story or this kind of folktale actually plays a part in the next trilogy that I'm going to read, which is the Tawny Man trilogy, which is this one is the first book, Fool's Errand. So actually I'm really intrigued to see where that story ties in with this story and see if we learn more about it or if the characters learn more about it or what happens, I don't know. But I'm really, really excited to start this trilogy. So I'm really glad that I read The Willful Princess and The Piebald Prince before reading this one, for sure. I say all that without actually reading this one. Maybe I'll read this and find out that I should have left it to after this trilogy. Who knows? But yeah, at the moment, it's just intrigued me more for this story. And I'm going to be reading this in April and I can't wait. I'm so excited. Okay, and then the final book that I read in March is actually like on the last night stroke morning of April, so only just counting it. But I finished Reaching for the Moon by Katherine Johnson, which is one of the books that we're reading for the X Book Club. We'll have a live discussion for that at the start of May if anybody's interested. So Hannah and myself are going to be talking a lot more in detail about this then. But very briefly, I'll just tell you about what this book actually is. So this is Katherine Johnson's autobiography, which was published in 2019. Katherine Johnson actually passed away in 2020, the beginning of 2020. So at 101. So this was written kind of when in her very late stages of life. But in this story, Katherine Johnson is telling her life story. So she speaks for the first half of the book about growing up in segregated America and what that meant for her family, what that meant for her education and her family's education, and just kind of how it affected them in general, and also just a bit about their kind of everyday life and what it was like. This book is actually aimed at children, so on the back it says that it's aimed at ages 10 and up, and it does read like it's for kids, obviously, because it would have to, but that kind of means that the language can be quite simplistic and to the point, but I actually quite enjoyed that because I myself, I don't really know much about American history, only like bits and bobs. I couldn't definitively say a timeline of what happens when. But Katherine like injects a lot of history into this as she goes, and also she talks very bluntly about the effects of segregation and how white people treated black people. And I thought that was really effective, and I think for children reading this, I mean, I don't really know about kids and ages and what they know at age 10 and up. I have no idea, to be honest. I can't remember what it was like being 10, but I did find some of the things quite shocking to read, so I think it would affect children. But she did a very good job of explaining like terminology, being quite frank about lynching and the effects of and white people attacking black people just for being black and all of this, and it was very kind of to the point and just said it how it was basically. And I think that was done really well. Certainly if you have a child and they're reading this, there's a lot of discussion to be had about this period of time in history. I did, however, think that some of the descriptions of the places where Katherine was a bit lost on me because I'm not good at directions at the best of times. So telling me that this place is here and in this place in Ohio and this place, I had no idea because I don't really know the landscape. So there was a few kind of paragraphs here and there that was a bit lost on me when it came to describing the towns and where everything was and everything like that. The second half of this book kind of then starts about the time when Katherine Johnson began work at the NACA, which was the precursor to NASA, and later on it discusses when it transitioned to NASA and her role working on sending the first people to the moon and the first man into orbit and all of that kind of stuff, and that I found really interesting, and I kind of wish it was bigger. This book isn't very long, and yeah, I wish there was a little bit more detail about that, but that's just because I'm interested in that area of science anyway. If you've seen Hidden Figures, that was based on Katherine Johnson's life and other people's lives as well. And she does speak a little bit about the film at the end, in positive terms. I can't remember the exact number now. I think she says it's like 75% accurate, and there are other things that were added in for like Hollywood drama. So I would be interested to kind of watch it again. I have seen Hidden Figures and I did really like it, but I would be interested in seeing it again just to kind of compare with the truth of what actually happened. But yeah, overall I did enjoy, and like I said, Hannah and myself will be discussing this in a lot more detail in our live discussion. So if you would like to kind of hear more about the book, or if you've read the book and you'd like to discuss it with us, then hopefully details for that live discussion will be coming soon and you guys can join us. Okay, so I'm quickly going to wrap up TBR Trail for March now. And as you've probably gathered, I've completely lost. So that means that I'm on a book buying ban for the month of April, which is fine, I guess. I guess it's okay. So when I did my March rolls, I also rolled for Louisa and got 4 prompts for her as well, and she smashed it and completely completed all the challenges. So I'll link to her blog post down in the description for you to check out if you'd like to, and just see what books she picked up for her prompts. But yeah, smashed it, completed. I think everyone is going to beat me at this game, but that's okay. Maybe one day I'll win, who knows. But yeah, so just to wrap up how I did for my TBR Trail. I first completed the prompt for read a book with K in the title, which was a fiction book as well, and for that I read Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. And then the second one I completed, and basically the only other one I completed off my TBR Trail, was for STEM non-fiction, read a book with a face on the cover, and that I read Reaching for the Moon by Katherine Johnson for that one. And then what I've got left are non-fiction stroke free choice, which was read a book set in Oceania, which actually I was going to read 4 Corners for that, but I've switched it out. And I have actually started this book, and it's called A Death in the Rainforest. I can't remember who it's by now off the top of my head, but I'll put a copy of it here so you can see. Yeah, so I'll talk about that more in April, in my April wrap up, because I'm probably going to read it in April. And then the last prompt that I had on my game was a STEM or a fiction book, read a book that has been turned into a film, and for that I chose The Martian by Andy Weir. And yeah, I'm almost done with that actually, so that's so nearly completed. I've got about 4 hours left of the audiobook, which is narrated by Will Wheaton, and yeah, I'm really liking that. It's really funny. I'm really enjoying it, and I love like all the technical details of that book and just kind of working through like all the problems that he's encountering. But yeah, like with Death in the Rainforest, I'll talk about that more in my April wrap up when I've completed it. So yeah, so that's it for today. So didn't do too great with my TBR Trail reads, but I will be punished and I cannot buy books for the month of April. Hopefully I'll do better for my April TBR. I've literally planned out how much to read every single day for the whole of this month, pretty much. Well, for the first 2 weeks, because I've got so many books that I want to try and finish and get to in April. I did finish another book actually in March, which was Hood Feminism, which was also on a previous TBR Trail. But I'm going to be talking more about that in my Buzzwordathon video for it, because I read it for Buzzwordathon. So I did end up reading 5 books in March, which to be honest I'm really happy with. I'd love to know what your favourite book was that you read in March, and also if you've read any of the books that I've read and your thoughts on those, I'd love to know them too. So feel free to leave a little comment. If you'd like to, just let me know your thoughts. Okay, cool. So that is everything for this month. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I will check in with you soon. Take care, guys. Bye.